What if Itachi never massacred the Uchiha clan? How would this one change impact the Naruto story as a whole? Well, I decided to take up this mantle and figure out what exactly would happen. This is my own interpretation, and just so you know, it's not canon, so take it with a grain of salt. That said, this is going to be having a lot of things that I wish could have happened, so it's going to be a little biased in terms of how the story ends up unfolding. That said, if you guys want to enjoy today's video and my take on what if Itachi never massacred the clan, then make sure to slap that like button and also click that red button and join the army. That said, enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Okay, so first and foremost, we have to talk about why Itachi doesn't go through with the murdering of his clan. And the one reason that I could potentially see Itachi not going through with it would basically be of Shisui. Shisui's death would have one major change that happens to the story. Shisui would tell Itachi to protect the clan. And Itachi hearing this would say, and Shisui would simply die. He falls off the cliff. And from here, Itachi's left with two ultimatums. He kills the clan and leaves his village to have a war, or he massacres his own clan, women and children alike. Itachi's stuck with these thoughts. All of these things go through his head, and the only thing that Sasuke knows for sure is that he wants to save his brother. So what ends up happening is basically the very next day, when he has an encounter with the Uchiha police force, he ends up telling his father the actions of Danzo and informs him that he will be taking no part in what happens the night that they end up having the coup go down. He ends up telling Fugaku that he's going to be taking Sasuke with him and deserting the village. Fugaku tells Itachi to stop without any signs of aggression or just Sharingan activated whatsoever. He tells him that he's sorry for failing him, but that he's thankful that he's going to be protecting Sasuke to the very end. Itachi hears these words from his father and then proceeds to say, yeah, sure, just don't go killing yourself, as he walks off. And then he goes towards Sasuke, where he tells him to pack his bags and tells him that they're going on a mission. Sasuke, being naive as a child, just smiles, and Fugaku makes sure that Sasuke has one final goodbye with his mother. This might be the last time he sees them. Sasuke goes to do so, and then he leaves with Itachi. The night of the massacre does not end up happening, and Itachi ends up leaving with Sasuke. This is when we have one of two scenarios unfold. Number one, Fugaku is going to essentially end up going after Danzo because he's one of the reasons that one of the main hitters of the Uchiha clan is gone. He killed Shisui, and Fugaku's not going to let that slide. Not only that, but he's also going to be calling an Uchiha meeting and essentially making the Uchiha coup happen way faster than would have been canon, telling them all to act as if they're completely unaware, go to sleep, act as if the coup's going to happen in the next day. But what's really going to be happening and going down is basically the Uchiha clan is going to be having the coup happen at night. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions about what the Uchihas were trying to do. Like, were they trying to just kill the village and take over forcefully, or was it going to be more of a peaceful takedown? Well, I'm going to be going with the latter, that is essentially the peaceful takedown, because in the Uchiha novels, I'm pretty sure it had said that even though they wanted to start a coup, they loved the village. They were not just going to go out and slaughter everybody and take control. I mean, there's no point. They might as well leave the village, if anything. Maybe, what if the Uchihas deserted the village might be a good concept? Question mark, question mark? Comment it down below. I'll make sure to read those and I'll potentially make that a video. That said though, essentially Fugaku's plan was that of pretty much taking advantage of the higher ups and putting them in a position where they had to compromise with the Uchihas. That way everybody could be spared and there wouldn't be countless bloodshed. And that's essentially what I believe that the Uchiha clan's plan was. It's the smartest thing without sacrificing the nation's assets and also without even having to take Naruto. One thing that I believe would happen is essentially Hiruzen is putting Naruto under his care and making sure that Naruto doesn't get touched. the Uchihas basically go after some of the village elders, and Fugaku ends up getting rid of Danzo, because this could either go one of two ways, and it's what I said earlier, where either Danzo is allowed to stay in power and eventually ends up becoming a traitor to the village and trying to massacre the Uchiha himself, or number two, we have a fight between Fugaku and Danzo go down, in which this time Danzo doesn't have access to a bunch of Sharingan like he would have in canon, and instead literally only has Shisui's eye, which he probably already would have implanted into his face. Seeing as Sasuke, like at 15 or 16 years old, was able to handle Danzo by himself, I have zero doubts that Fugaku, who I'm pretty sure was way stronger than Itachi at the time of the massacre, would have been more than enough to actually take Danzo out. So what I believe ends up happening is Fugaku catches Danzo off guard before he's actually able to use Kodo Matsukami, and ends up placing him under his own genjutsu, which ends up essentially helping him with the pretty much utter killing of Danzo. Following these events, the Uchiha pretty much ends up holding a ransom towards the village, telling them that if they do not give the Uchihas a place of power in this village, they are going to desert and ultimately start the next ninja war. And if they don't want that to happen and countless bloodshed to go down, then they need to start showing the Uchiha clan some respect, telling them that they are not going to be placed in this sorry corner of the village for the entire Leaf Village to feel safe, because it was not their fault that the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki attacked all those years ago. Hiruzen ultimately has his hand tied and pretty much ends up having to give control of Hokage to Fugaku Uchiha, something that I believe should have happened in the original canon. Because if Fugaku became the Hokage, a lot of the bad things that happened in the Naruto universe could have been avoided entirely. One would be the death of Minato and Kushina, seeing as Fugaku would actually be able to have a bunch of Uchiha stop the Nine-Tails. So with Fugaku's leadership role into the village now, we end up having more than a couple changes happening to the Naruto story as a whole. Itachi and Sasuke, like I said before, ended up deserting the village and pretty much are trying to live their lives in peace and on the run. And it's been a couple of days. This whole argument that happens between Hiruzen and the Uchiha clan isn't something that just gets resolved in one day the way that I'm explaining it. No, it's far more complicated than that. Hiruzen ultimately has to bend over backwards for Fugaku, and essentially he becomes Kage, like I said before. Following these events, what I believe ends up happening is the Leaf Village has a tad bit of resentment towards the Uchiha clan, and this ends up kind of festering for a couple of years, but then Fugaku was able to essentially gather the trust of the Leaf Village and appoint more Uchiha clan members into the higher up roles. Hiruzen is finally let go into retirement, and once he's able to see that, Fugaku is not doing this from a place of malice, is able to ultimately accept that Fugaku became Kage, and actually accept that he was wrong in picking Minato over Fugaku, thinking to himself that maybe if he had picked Fugaku instead, maybe all of these events could have been avoided. Itachi and Sasuke eventually catch the news of all this that had happened, and after about 1 year of being gone from the village, Itachi returns with Sasuke back to the Leaf Village, where he's a lot stronger than he would be in canon, because he would have actually been training with Itachi day by day and learning new things from Itachi, and also not even knowing about the death of his parents, the Uchiha coup, or anything that would have happened. Itachi would end up making sure that Sasuke grew up in a good place and didn't fester any hatred towards the Uchiha, towards the village, towards anything. They end up returning a couple years later, and Sasuke and Naruto end up making their way towards the academy, where things kind of end up staying the same place that they would have in canon. One more change that I definitely want to put into place is that Fugaku will have actually ended up placing Naruto training under the Uchiha clan members, because he is an asset of the village, and Fugaku is a man who makes sure to keep his assets in the best possible position possible. I mean, we saw how he dealt with Itachi's situation of joining the Anbu Force. The first thing that he decided to do was to make Itachi an asset to the Uchiha clan. So him using the tools and things that he has to his disposal to actually train Naruto up is one thing that helps the clan a ton and the village as a whole, making sure that the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki won't be off in a mission just like any other random shinobi. So Naruto is trained, and when Sasuke returns back to the village and they eventually have their graduation from the academy, Naruto, Sasuke, as well as Sakura would be placed in her Team 7 under the guidance of Kakashi. And what ends up essentially following following after these events is we end up having the Land of the Waves arc mission, which ends up actually happening a lot easier than it would have in canon. Sasuke at this point would have already have unlocked the first Tomoe Sharingan earlier on and fought Haku. Naruto would have more control over the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki state and wouldn't lose himself to the hatred. His speech against Zabuza would still end up happening just like it would in canon, and the clan in and of itself would essentially be prospering. The only real changes that end up happening to the story via Itachi killing the clan would be that the clan would be in a better position in the village. Number 1, a lot of events that would have happened in canon, such as the death of Hiruzen and the Chunin exams, are most likely going to be avoided because of the fact that Orochimaru is not just going to rush into the village when he knows that there's a bunch of Uchihas there. So the Chunin exams takeover never happens. Hiruzen doesn't die as early as he would have in canon, and when Jiraiya ends up returning back to the village to train Naruto's able to be more of a prodigious person, where he ends up actually learning the Rasengan earlier than he does in canon, and learning the summoning of Gamabunta much earlier than he would have in canon as well. Another thing that would end up changing a lot is the fact that Sasuke never ends up running off with Orochimaru, and they never have to go for Tsunade with the retrieval arc, which in turn leads to a peaceful 3-year time skip in which Jiraiya still takes Naruto off somewhere and Sasuke remains in the village training under his father and brother, who eventually ends up being healed after a couple of years pass. Now, this is where you guys are probably going to be wondering how Itachi gets healed. Well, once the sickness of Itachi is revealed, they would try countless medical ninjas to save his son Itachi. However, when all fails, they end up deciding to go gather Tsunade during the 3-year time skip to actually save Itachi's life. This results in Itachi being saved much earlier than he would have been, actually not earlier, but literally saved in canon. And what essentially ends up going down following these events is once Fugaku actually becomes a lot older and his role as Kage pretty much ends up expiring, Itachi is the one who ends up taking the mantle of Hokage next. I mean, it's one of the things that Itachi would have always wanted to do, and seeing as Naruto still isn't old enough to take over that role of Hokage, Itachi is the one who ends up doing it towards the end when Kakashi would have ended up coming into power about 1 year later. So that's basically what ends up happening in the story. The Akatsuki clan is still going to be a bit of a, kind of like head scratcher, because what ends up happening with them is a little bit questionable. Number 1, I'm not sure if Yagura would have ended up being killed in the battles, seeing as the ninja that Itachi fought against him with would have ended up dying, and Itachi's not being there would not let them use the Amaterasu to take him out. So I'm not sure if he would have been taken out. So the Mist Village would probably still be in that state that they were in canon, but I'm not ultimately too sure. Orochimaru would have ended up sticking with the Akatsuki during all these years due to the fact that Itachi was not there and he didn't end up scaring him off. What I end up seeing happening following these events is Obito's eventual wanting to take up the Tailed Beast leads him to take over the One-Tailed Jinchuriki, followed by the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And eventually, once he begins to get towards the 9th person of the village, and Pain ends up coming to the village to try to take the 9th Jinchuriki via force after the time skip, Naruto, with all this extra training and fundamentals down, is able to have a lot of an easier time fighting against Pain, alongside the assistance of Sasuke, who remains in the village, and Fugaku, who is there, as well as Itachi with an entire Susanoo in hand. Pain is handled very quickly, and the devastation of the village still happens like it would in canon. I'm not sure if this would happen, but we have one of two options. Number 1, a lot of the people that end up dying stay dead, or number 2, Naruto goes off to find Pain and still ends up Takno Jutsuing him to revive everybody who he had killed in the massacre that was the Leaf Village. That said, Pain ends up agreeing to do so, and from here we end up pretty much making our way towards the 5 Kage summit, in which Obito reveals himself and explains to everybody that the 4th Great Shinobi World War will be taking place. Everybody ends up getting all of their allies together, and Fugaku is still going to be in power, mind you. So Fugaku ends up pretty much telling Killer B or Raikage A that they all need to work together in cause of defeating the Akatsuki, that they've been a pest since a while back, and that taking them out will be under the utmost importance. That said, during this time, Naruto would still go out to train with Killer B, and he would be kept away from the war as well as would Killer B. Itachi being alive in the present story would still have the role of taking Kabuto under his control and not allowing Kabuto to essentially use his plan that he was going to enact, where he kept up the the bringing people back from the death jutsu. He's not able to keep that up, and essentially what ends up happening is the Fourth Great Shinobi World War essentially plays out like it would in canon. Replace Fugaku with Tsunade in the situation of the fight versus Madara, and we actually have a really dope battle. Uchiha versus Uchiha. Susanoo versus Susanoo. It's actually going to be really interesting when you really think about it. What do you guys think would happen if Fugaku and Madara Uchiha fought? Obviously, Madara is still going to be wiping the floor with him, but I think it would be interesting to see Madara hold back a bit and have like a little bit of a back and forth interaction between the two of them. With Madara watching how the Uchiha have progressed and how they're actually allowed to be in power in the village, actually ends up shocking Madara a bit and making him kind of sway his beliefs just a bit. However, he still ends up wanting to go through with the power of the infinite Tsukiyomi, and essentially the village ends up being saved by Sasuke and Naruto after their apparent deaths and resurrections by Hagoromo, the sage of the six paths. Following these events, we end up essentially just having a time of huge peace go over us and Itachi's eventual succession over the Kage role, followed by Naruto, who ends up actually taking the Hokage role a couple years after he would in canon. This time, he's actually there to raise Boruto a little longer, and Himawari has a dad that's actually present, not a no-show on her birthday. That said, what did you guys think of today's what if scenario? Did you guys enjoy my interpretation of what if Itachi never massacred the clan? Did you not? Did you hate it? Let me know what I could have done better. And also, if you made it to the end of the video, comment hashtag Sakura is trash. Why? I don't know. I just love doing that. I hate Sakura. That said though, if you enjoyed any part of today's video, make sure to slap that like button up, and also comment what your favorite part of the video was. That said, I love each and every single one of you guys. Let me know what you guys thought of the what if down below in the comments, and peace.